The planet Valoria was dying. Its crystal forests, once shimmering under twin suns, now stood shattered, their delicate branches broken by relentless storms. The rivers, which had sung songs of life for centuries, churned red with mud and ash. Entire cities had crumbled under the shaking of the ground, leaving behind ruins that whispered sorrow. The Valorians, a gentle race with pale translucent skin and luminous eyes, had lived in harmony with their world for generations, crafting beauty and art that rivaled the stars. But nothing they had created could withstand the approaching horror. Far beyond Valoria, in the darkness of space, a swarm of Kralith approached, like a storm made of teeth and claws. The Kralith were hunters of the cosmos, creatures that devoured everything in their path: planets, cities, entire civilizations. They moved with terrifying precision, their scales glinting under the light of distant stars. Once they had been myths, whispered fears and stories across the galaxy. Now they were very real, and Valoria was their next victim. On the surface, panic had set in. Valorian children clutched their parents' hands as buildings trembled, and the sky cracked open with red lightning. Families huddled together in underground shelters, praying to the ancient spirits of Valoria for mercy. The council, the leaders of the planet, convened in the largest city, its towers now cracked and unstable. Their normally calm voices trembled as they debated, knowing that time was slipping through their fingers like sand. "This is beyond our ability," whispered Elder Sari, her eyes reflecting the burning horizon. "We cannot fight them. We have no weapons, no ships, no armies, nothing. But hope, fragile and desperate, sparked in the heart of another council member, Joran. He had watched the stars for years, knowing that somewhere beyond their small system, there were civilizations that might help. "We must call for aid," he said. "Even if the galaxy ignores us, even if no one comes, we must try. We cannot surrender without trying." And so they sent the signal, a plea that stretched across light years, a message of desperation and humility. "Help us," it began. "Our world is dying. Our people face extinction. Please, anyone who hears us, come before it is too late." Days passed. Weeks. The Valorians waited with hearts in their throats, eyes scanning the skies for even a hint of response. Ships from neighboring systems appeared only to pass by, uninterested or unwilling to risk their own safety. The galaxy had heard their cries, but most chose silence. The Valorians began to feel the cold grip of despair. They had always believed in the kindness of others, in a universe where civilizations would stand together in times of need. But reality was cruel. Valoria's people began to whisper to one another in the shelters, "We are alone. The stars have abandoned us." Yet far away across the spiral arms of the Milky Way, a different kind of answer stirred. On a planet rich in oceans and forests, where humans lived in small, bustling cities and wild lands teeming with creatures that had adapted to every challenge, the signal reached a fleet of explorers. They were humans, known for their unpredictability, their courage, and their fierce attachment to life itself. And they did not wait for permission or politics. The humans gathered their ships, sleek and powerful, equipped with engines that could outpace most star systems. But it wasn't just technology that set them apart. It was what they brought with them. From the forests of Earth, the deserts, the frozen tundras, and the oceans, they had brought beasts. Animals bred and trained for survival and loyalty. Wolves with intelligence as sharp as any Valorian mind. Gorillas strong enough to crush armored tanks. Birds that could see across miles, and many more. These were not just creatures, they were warriors, companions, allies. As the human fleet moved through the darkness of space, the Valorians remained unaware. They had grown so accustomed to silence, to the emptiness of the void, that they did not imagine a salvation could be coming. Yet destiny was moving toward them, carrying fire, teeth, and courage in forms they had never known. The first starship pierced Valoria's atmosphere like a silver arrow, leaving a streak of hope across the stormy sky. From it, humans disembarked, and alongside them, the beasts of Earth emerged, their eyes glowing with intelligence, loyalty, and a fierce hunger for justice. The Kralith had never faced anything like this. For the Valorians, the arrival was almost unbelievable. They had been abandoned, left with nothing but fear and despair. And now, before their very eyes, a force unlike any they had imagined stepped onto their world. Something told them that the stories they had heard of humans, the reckless, bold and unyielding species, might be more than myths. Valoria's hearts, once heavy with hopelessness, began to stir with a fragile, trembling light. For the first time in weeks, someone was listening. For the first time, they could hope again. And the universe, vast and indifferent, had just begun to remember humanity's name. The sky above Valoria burned with the storm of the Krelith, yet through the crimson clouds strange lights appeared, silver streaks cutting through the darkness. The Valorians watched in disbelief as ships unlike any they had seen before descended upon their planet. They were sleek, metallic, and humming with power, moving with confidence and precision, and then the doors opened. From the human ships came figures that were smaller than the Krelith but radiated a different kind of strength. They carried weapons that glowed with energy, but more than that, they carried companions, creatures from another world, Earth itself, creatures bred to survive, to fight, and to protect. Wolves with sharp, intelligent eyes leapt from the ships, landing on broken streets and cracked stones as if they had been born for this battlefield. Gorillas, taller than Valorian guards, moved with careful strength, their muscles rippling as they assessed the chaos around them. Birds, sleek and fast, took flight into the crimson sky, their piercing eyes scanning for danger. The Valorians had never seen anything like it. Some fell to their knees, overwhelmed by fear, wonder, and disbelief. "Are these gods?" whispered a young Valorian girl, her voice trembling. "Or angels?" But the humans were neither gods nor angels. They were strange, pale beings with determination etched into every line of their faces. They moved with precision, commanding the beasts with voices that carried authority and trust. A single whistle, a gesture, a word, and the wolves darted forward, tearing through the smaller Krelith drones with speed and skill. The gorillas smashed through larger Krelith with fists that could shatter steel, while the birds distracted and blinded the hunters, keeping them off balance. For the first time in weeks, the Valorians saw hope. The Krelith, the unstoppable predators of the stars, were being fought, and the ones fighting them were not only strong, they were fearless, yet victory did not come easily. The Krelith adapted quickly, their multi-limbed bodies and sharp claws reacting faster than anything the humans or Valorians had anticipated. For every drone the wolves brought down, 2 more seemed to replace it. The ground shook as the Krelith queen herself emerged from the storm clouds, a massive creature with scales black as night, eyes like molten fire, and teeth capable of crushing boulders. Humans and beasts alike hesitated, if only for a fraction of a second. Then, with synchronized precision, the humans gave commands. Wolves split into packs, surrounding the enemy, while gorillas charged straight at the queen, drawing her attention. Birds dived from above, scratching and pecking at her sensitive eyes. The humans fired energy pulses, striking the Krelith's armored body with calculated force. The Valorians could hardly believe what they were seeing. These humans and their beasts were not fighting like simple soldiers. They were dancing with death, fearless and united, moving as one against a creature that had destroyed countless worlds. And yet, for all their strength, the battle was brutal. Streets were torn apart, buildings crumbled, and cries filled the air. Some of the wolves fell, their bodies pierced by the Krelith's claws. Gorillas roared as they were injured, refusing to retreat. Humans shouted, urging their companions forward, refusing to yield even in the face of overwhelming odds. Amid the chaos, a human girl knelt beside a fallen Valorian child, shielding them from debris. Her hands shook, but she smiled gently, reassuring the frightened child. "You're safe now," she whispered. It was the first Valorian to hear the voice of another species speaking not as conqueror, but as protector. Tears streamed down the child's face, a mixture of relief and awe. The humans quickly assessed the Valorians' fear and fragility. They did not ask for thanks, nor did they wait for understanding. They simply acted, and slowly the Valorians began to step forward, watching carefully, learning from these brave strangers. For the first time, Valoria's leaders realized something astonishing. Survival might actually be possible. These humans with their beasts were different from anyone the Valorians had ever known. They did not come for conquest or trade or politics. They came because they had heard a plea and chosen to act. Yet even as hope grew, the Krelith pressed harder. The swarm adapted to the new predators, learning their patterns. Every strike, every maneuver was met with counterattack. The humans realized that the battle would not be won by strength alone. Strategy, coordination, and courage would be required, not just from them, but from the Valorians themselves. And so the first lesson began. Humans began teaching the Valorians how to move with the beasts, how to anticipate the Kralith's attacks, how to fight not as isolated creatures but as a united force. Wolves taught stealth, gorillas showed power, birds taught vigilance, and humans led with wisdom and courage. In that moment, something extraordinary happened. The Valorians, once hopeless and timid, began to imagine a world where they could fight, where they could survive, where they could hope. The Kralith may have been the hunters of the stars, but now a new force had come to Valoria, Earth's humans and their unstoppable beasts. The battle was far from over. The sky still burned red, and the ground shook with every step of the Kralith. But for the first time, Valoria dared to dream. The humans and their beasts had arrived, and with them, the impossible suddenly felt within reach. Valoria's capital, Luminara, was a city of beauty and light, built from crystalline towers that reflected the twin suns. Now the city lay in ruin. Streets were cracked and littered with debris, and the once glowing buildings flickered like dying stars. The red storms above raged unchecked, and the air trembled with the relentless approach of the Kralith swarm. The Valorians huddled in shelters, their fear almost tangible, their hope fragile. Human soldiers stood at the edges of the city, their weapons glowing softly in the dim light. Wolves paced in disciplined formation, their eyes scanning for danger. Gorillas flexed their immense arms, ready to charge. Birds circled above, their cries cutting through the storm. The humans had prepared for battle, but even they felt the weight of what lay ahead. The Kralith were no ordinary enemy. They were cunning, relentless, and merciless. A tremor ran through the ground, and the Kralith emerged from the crimson clouds, their massive bodies glinting in the storm's flickering light. Smaller drones swarmed first, testing the defenders' reactions, while towering hunters advanced like living mountains of bone and claw. The humans signaled the wolves forward. With a synchronized leap, the pack scattered among the drones, teeth and claws striking with deadly precision. The first sounds of battle erupted. Metal and crystal shattered. Claws tore through walls, and the air was filled with the shrieks of the Kralith. Gorillas charged, swinging debris like hammers, smashing drones that came too close. Birds dived, blinding the enemy and creating openings for human marksmen. Every action was precise, almost choreographed, yet born from instinct and courage rather than fear. The Valorians watched in awe. They had never seen fighting like this, such coordination between species, such bravery. For them, this was more than a battle. It was a revelation. The humans and their beasts were not just warriors. They were protectors, and in their presence, Valoria felt less alone. But the battle was brutal. A massive Kralith, larger than any recorded before, stepped forward, its black scales gleaming with crimson reflections. Its eyes burned like molten fire, and its claws ripped through stone and steel as though they were paper. It roared, shaking the ground with a force that sent smaller Valorians stumbling backward. Fear surged, and even the humans felt the weight of this monstrous predator. One human soldier, Lieutenant Mara, barked orders. "Flank it! Wolves to the left! Gorillas straight ahead. Birds distract the eyes." The beasts obeyed without hesitation, their loyalty absolute. Wolves darted around the Kralith's massive legs, biting and pulling. Gorillas charged, fists smashing against armored scales. Birds pecked and clawed, keeping its attention divided. Human rifles fired in coordinated volleys, striking where the creatures were vulnerable. The Kralith roared in frustration, swinging its massive tail and crushing a section of the crystalline road. Wolves were knocked aside, gorillas fell hard, and dust and debris filled the air. Yet every human and beast that fell was replaced immediately. The humans moved with calm precision, retrieving fallen comrades where they could, adjusting strategies in seconds, and never letting fear dominate. In a quiet alley, a young Valorian boy watched the chaos with wide, terrified eyes. Beside him, a human girl knelt, holding his trembling hands. "You will be safe," she said firmly, her voice steady even as the world shook around them. "Stay close. Watch and learn. We will not let them take you." The boy nodded, a spark of hope igniting in his chest for the first time in weeks. As the Kralith advanced deeper into the city, the humans realized that brute force alone would not win this battle. They needed precision, intelligence, and courage beyond fear. They began directing the Valorians, showing them where to hide, how to assist, and, when ready, how to fight alongside them. The Valorians, trembling at first, began to follow instructions, slowly gaining confidence with each passing minute. Hours passed, though it felt like days. Every street, every tower, every shattered plaza became a battlefield. The Krelith pressed harder, adapting to the humans' tactics, but the humans adapted faster. The wolves anticipated their movements. The gorillas countered strikes before they landed. And the birds created chaos in ways the Krelith could not predict. By the end of the day, the Krelith had been pushed back, though not defeated. The capital still lay in ruins, but the humans and their beasts had shown Valoria a truth that no counsel or prophecy could teach. Courage, unity, and determination could defy even the greatest terror. As night fell and the storm clouds began to disperse, the Valorians emerged cautiously from their shelters. They walked among the humans and the beasts, touching broken walls, examining the fallen, and realizing something incredible. This was more than a battle, it was a promise. A promise that they were not alone, that even in the darkest moments someone would answer their call. And in the hearts of every Valorian, hope began to grow. Not the fragile hope of waiting, but the fierce, burning hope of fighting, surviving, and standing with allies who would never abandon them. The first clash had been terrifying, but it had also been a revelation. Survival was possible, and the humans and their beasts were the reason. The Krelith would return. The war was far from over, but for the first time Valoria dared to believe that it could endure. The morning after the first battle, Valoria's capital was quiet, but the calm was fragile. Cracked streets still smoked. Buildings leaned precariously, and the air smelled of burnt metal and scorched earth. Survivors emerged slowly from shelters, their eyes wide with disbelief. They had seen monsters, weapons, and creatures beyond imagination. And most importantly, they had seen humans fight alongside animals as if they were one soul, not separate beings. Captain Arlen, a human commander with streaks of silver in his hair and eyes sharp with focus, gathered a small group of Valorians. Wolves padded silently beside him while gorillas stood like towers of strength. Birds hovered above, circling and squawking as if reminding everyone that danger was never far away. "Today," Arlen said, his voice firm but gentle, "we teach you how to survive. You cannot hide forever. You cannot expect others to save you, but you can fight, together with us. With the beasts, you have a chance if you learn quickly." The Valorians listened in awe. Many were hesitant. Their hands had never held weapons, and their bodies had never been trained for battle. Some had barely seen violence beyond small conflicts among themselves. Yet in their fear there was curiosity. And in their curiosity, there was the first spark of courage. The humans began slowly showing the Valorians how to move with the wolves. They taught them to anticipate the animal's actions, how a wolf might circle an enemy, how it might protect its human companion, how it communicated without words. The Valorians struggled at first, their movements clumsy, their timing off, but the wolves were patient, nudging them gently, responding to hesitation with calm understanding. Next came the gorillas. Their immense strength was frightening yet awe-inspiring. The humans guided the Valorians to work alongside the gorillas, teaching them when to attack, when to hold, and how to use their surroundings to their advantage. Rocks, debris, even the remnants of destroyed buildings became tools, not obstacles. Valorians discovered muscles and courage they did not know they possessed. Above, the birds taught vigilance. The Valorians learned to observe, to notice the smallest shifts in the air, the faintest glint of movement among rubble. Humans explained how the Krelith watched, how they predicted, how they hunted. The Valorians began to understand that knowledge could be as powerful as strength. Awareness became their armor. Days passed. The humans did not rush them. Every lesson, every failure, every small success was repeated until instinct replaced fear. Slowly, the Valorians began to walk with confidence. They moved with the wolves, shouted directions with the humans, and learned to anticipate attacks with the birds circling above. The gorillas became both shields and partners in combat, teaching that courage was strongest when shared. One evening, as the twin suns set behind crimson clouds, a young Valorian woman named Lyra approached Captain Arlen. Her hands trembled slightly, but her eyes burned with determination. I understand now," she said softly. "I can fight. I want to fight. For my people. For my home. For Valoria." Arlen nodded, a rare smile breaking through his normally serious expression. "Good. That is the first step. Remember, it is not just fighting that matters, it is believing in yourself and in those beside you. Trust in the wolves. Trust in the birds. Trust in us. Trust in yourself." The Valorians began training as units. Wolves and humans paired with Valorians in small squads. Gorillas taught groups to coordinate strength. Birds acted as scouts, signaling threats and opportunities. For the first time, Valoria's people were learning to fight as one. A combined force of intelligence, strategy, and raw courage. Even as the Krelith swarmed closer, the Valorians no longer felt paralyzed by fear. Every day they gained skill, every day they gained courage. They saw the humans' sacrifices, the loyalty of the beasts, and realized that survival was not about fleeing. It was about standing together. The bond between species grew stronger with every shared effort, every narrow escape, and every lesson learned in the ruins of their beloved city. One night, Lyra stood at the edge of the ruined city, watching the stars above. She felt the wind through her hair, the soft nudge of a wolf at her side, the gentle presence of a gorilla behind her. The city was broken, the storms not yet over, but hope had returned. For the first time, she believed Valoria could survive. The humans and their beasts had not just arrived to save Valoria, they had come to teach its people to save themselves. And in that lesson, the Valorians found a courage deeper than any storm, stronger than any predator. The first spark of rebellion against the Krelith had begun, not through weapons alone, but through unity, trust, and the realization that together they could face the stars without fear. The Krelith would return, stronger than before, but so would Valoria. And this time, the Valorians would be ready. The sky over Luminara burned crimson as the Krelith Queen returned, larger and more terrifying than ever. Her massive body blotted out the clouds, and her eyes glowed like molten fire. The swarm behind her pressed relentlessly, filling every street with claws, fangs, and death. Valoria trembled beneath her steps, and the people who had begun to feel hope now felt fear crawling back like a shadow. Captain Arlen studied the battlefield, his jaw tight. The humans had fought well, and the Valorians had learned much, but this enemy was different. The Queen was cunning, relentless, and smarter than anything they had faced. A direct confrontation could cost the city its very life. They needed a plan, one that would buy the Valorians time to escape and perhaps turn the tide. Arlen turned to his team. "We cannot fight her head-on," he said. "The Queen is too strong. But we can distract her. We can give the Valorians a chance to survive. Wolves, gorillas, birds, you know your roles. Move swiftly, strike and retreat. Draw her attention. We must be willing to sacrifice ourselves if needed." A murmur ran through the group, but no one protested. They understood. The bond between humans and beasts was unbreakable, and now, their courage would be tested to its limits. Among the team, a young wolf pack led by Arlen's own companion wolf, Shadow, padded forward silently. Beside them, a gorilla named Brack flexed his enormous arms. Birds circled above, ready to dive and confuse the enemy. The humans spread out, positioning themselves strategically. Then, with a single nod from Arlen, the operation began. The Krelith Queen roared, shaking the ground. Arlen and Shadow sprinted forward, drawing her gaze. The Queen's massive claws struck the ground where Arlen had been moments before, sending debris flying. But he was already moving, guiding the wolf pack in synchronized attacks. The gorillas charged from another direction, forcing the Queen to divide her attention. Birds dived, pecking and clawing at her eyes, keeping her off balance. It was a dance of death, precision against raw power. Every strike from the humans and beasts was met with a devastating counterattack. Shadow, the lead wolf, leapt onto the Queen's leg, biting into her armored scales. But she swung her tail, sending him crashing into a shattered wall. Brack roared and charged, striking her flank with all his strength, only to be knocked back with a deafening crash. The Valorians watched from a distance, their hearts pounding. They had been learning to fight, but this was beyond anything they had imagined. Some wept silently, realizing the cost of survival. Others clenched their fists, drawing courage from the bravery before them. Then came the moment of ultimate sacrifice. Arlen turned to his team, his eyes meeting each human and beast. "Take the Valorians and retreat," he commanded. "We will hold her here." His voice was calm, but his heart raced. He knew the odds. The Krelith Queen would not spare them, but they had a duty to ensure Valoria lived. One by one, the humans and their beasts began leading the Valorians to safety. Wolves guided the frightened children, gorillas cleared paths through rubble, and birds scouted for remaining enemies. Arlen stayed behind, his hands gripping his weapon, Shadow at his side. Together, They became the center of the storm, drawing the queen's attention fully onto themselves. The queen roared again, her fury unmatched. She struck with claw and tail, each movement capable of crushing both human and beast in an instant. Shadow lunged bravely, biting at her legs, dodging and weaving as Arlen fired precise energy shots. Dust, fire, and ash filled the streets. Buildings shook and the ground cracked beneath the intensity of the battle. And then, with one final titanic swing, the queen struck. Arlen and Shadow were thrown back, disappearing into a cloud of debris and fire. The Valorians hiding just out of sight gasped in horror. Tears streamed down faces young and old. They had survived the first battles, learned to fight, and now they had lost their greatest allies. Yet the sacrifice was not in vain. The queen, enraged and injured, had focused entirely on Arlen and Shadow, leaving an opening for the remaining humans and Valorian fighters to push back smaller Krelith drones. Valoria's people were able to escape toward safer areas of the city, guided by the ones who had trained them. As night fell, the red storms began to fade slightly, though the battle was far from over. Lyra, the young Valorian woman who had been training with the humans, knelt amidst the ruins holding a fallen child close. She whispered a prayer to the stars, a plea to remember the sacrifice she had witnessed. "They gave everything," she murmured. "They believed in us. We must not fail." The humans and their beasts had shown Valoria a truth that no council, no crystal tower, no prophecy could teach. Survival required courage, unity, and selflessness. They had fought not for glory, not for power, but for the lives of those who could not yet fight for themselves. And in that lesson the Valorians found hope again. The Krelith queen would not forget this fight. She would return stronger, smarter, and more merciless. But now Valoria had learned a painful, beautiful truth. Even in the darkest hour, heroes could rise. Even the smallest, most fragile beings could endure. And those who gave their lives for others were remembered forever, their courage etched into the heart of every soul who survived. The morning sun pierced through the crimson clouds above Luminara, casting streaks of light on the ruined city. Smoke still rose from the shattered streets, but the survivors moved with purpose now. The Valorians, once timid and fearful, had learned. They had seen the humans and their beasts fight with courage, and they had trained step by step alongside them. Today they would stand not behind walls but shoulder to shoulder with their allies. Captain Arlen, though wounded from the previous battle, returned to the front lines. Shadow, the wolf who had fought at his side, limped but remained fiercely loyal. The remaining humans rallied, their eyes burning with determination. Beside them, gorillas flexed their arms and birds soared high, ready to signal attack or scout. Together they formed a force unlike anything the galaxy had seen. The Valorians joined them, each carrying makeshift weapons, shields, or tools taught by humans. Lyra stood at the forefront, her luminous eyes shining with resolve. Behind her, children who had once trembled in shelters now moved confidently with wolves at their sides. Elder Sari, who had once spoken of surrender, now led a group with steady hands, directing Valorian squads in coordinated maneuvers. And then, the Krelith returned. The queen appeared first, her massive form blotting out the sun, followed by waves of drones that spread across the streets like a living tide. The ground shook under her every step and the air vibrated with her guttural roar. But this time, the defenders did not hesitate. Arlen gave the command. "Valorians forward! Wolves flank! Gorillas hold the line! Birds watch the skies! Move as one!" It was a symphony of battle. Wolves darted through streets, herding drones into traps. Valorians, moving with newfound skill, attacked with precision, striking at weak points the humans had taught them to notice. Gorillas smashed through the largest enemies, holding them in place for humans and wolves to deliver decisive blows. Birds dived, their screeches and talons confusing the Krelith, masking the attacks of those below. The Valorians began to realize something incredible. Their fear no longer ruled them. Every move was calculated, every strike purposeful. The humans had taught them courage, but the battle gave them something greater: belief in themselves. They were no longer helpless victims. They were warriors. The Krelith queen roared and lashed out, swinging her massive tail. A Valorian boy named Taven ducked just in time, guided by a wolf that nudged him away from the strike. He looked up, heart pounding, and saw the humans and gorillas counterattack, forcing the queen to retreat slightly. The sight filled him with awe and pride. He understood now that bravery was not the absence of fear, it was acting despite it. As the battle raged, Arlen moved alongside Lyra, guiding her through the chaos. "Trust them," he shouted over the roar of the Krelith. "Trust the wolves. Trust the birds. Trust yourself. You are part of this fight now." Lyra nodded, feeling strength she never knew she possessed. She lunged forward, striking a weakened Krelith drone with a spear, while a wolf lunged at another from the side. The humans followed with precise shots, and the guerrillas smashed the enemy into the rubble. For the first time, the Krelith swarm began to falter. The tide of battle shifted further when Valorian scouts trained by birds identified a weak point in the Queen's flank. Coordinating silently, humans, Valorians, and beasts converged on the target. Wolves distracted her legs. Guerrillas struck with immense force, and Valorians attacked the vulnerable armor. Arlen, Shadow at his side, fired energy blasts into the Queen's side. Painful roars echoed across the city as the Queen staggered. Every strike, every maneuver, every brave act built momentum. The Krelith swarm, once terrifying and unstoppable, began to retreat. Drones fell one by one, crushed or torn apart by the combined forces. The Queen, wounded and enraged, roared once more before retreating into the crimson sky, dragging the remaining swarm with her. When the dust settled, the city was silent again, but this time the silence was different. It was not fear, it was awe, relief, and triumph. The Valorians walked among the humans and their beasts, touching broken walls, examining the fallen, and realizing they had survived something that once seemed impossible. Lyra knelt beside Shadow, placing a hand on his head. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice filled with emotion. Shadow nuzzled her gently, understanding the sentiment without words. Around her, Valorians embraced humans, stood beside guerrillas, and smiled at the birds that had guided them through the battle. Elder Sari looked at the crowd, her eyes shining. "We have seen courage today," she said softly. "Not just in humans, not just in their beasts, but in ourselves. Valoria is not doomed. We are stronger than we ever knew, and we are not alone." Captain Arlen surveyed the survivors. They were tired, wounded, and broken, but unbowed. They had turned despair into hope, fear into action. The Krelith would return, and the war was far from over, but now the defenders of Valoria knew they could fight. Together, humans, Valorians, and beasts had become a force that even the stars could not ignore. The city, though scarred, felt alive. A new dawn had arrived, not just in the sky, but in the hearts of every being who had fought. And as the first light of sunlight touched the crystalline towers, everyone understood something extraordinary. Survival was no longer just a hope. It was a certainty, born from unity, courage, and the fierce, unbreakable bond between species. Valoria had survived its first true test, and it would stand ready for whatever the stars sent next. The sky above Valoria was clearing. The crimson storms that had haunted the planet for weeks were retreating, leaving a pale light that touched the broken city. Luminara was scarred, its towers fractured and streets littered with rubble, but it stood. And more importantly, its people stood as well, humans, Valorians, and Earth's beasts side by side, breathing in the fragile calm after chaos. The Krelith Queen had retreated, her swarm broken and demoralized for now, but the scars of battle ran deep. The survivors walked carefully through the streets, touching remnants of what had once been homes, schools, and gardens. Tears mingled with smiles as they recognized both loss and victory. Valoria had survived, but the cost had been high. Captain Arlen moved through the streets with Shadow at his side. The human soldiers who remained were exhausted, but they carried a quiet pride. They had come to answer a desperate plea and had fought not for glory but for life itself. The Valorians, who had once trembled at the thought of battle, now walked with heads held high, their courage proven. Lyra knelt beside a small group of children, hugging them tightly. "You are safe now," she whispered. "And soon you will learn to be strong. Strong like your parents, strong like the humans, strong like the wolves and gorillas who fought beside us." She looked up at the sky, and for the first time in weeks, the stars seemed less distant, less cold. They were witnesses, silent but attentive to Valoria's resilience. Elder Sari approached Captain Arlen, her eyes filled with gratitude and sorrow. "You and your companions, you came when no one else did. You taught us not just to fight but to believe. How can we ever thank you?" Arlen shook his head. "No thanks are needed. We did what any human would do. We heard a call for help and answered. That's what we are. That's what we fight for. And the beasts? They fight because they trust us, and now, you all must trust yourselves. The Valorians looked around, seeing the wolves resting beside children, gorillas standing guard, and birds circling above. They realized that their survival had never depended on any single species alone. It had depended on unity, on courage, on trust, and most of all, it had depended on hope. Tears filled Lyra's eyes as she remembered those who had given everything. The humans, the wolves, Shadow, and the gorillas who had stood their ground against impossible odds. Captain Arlen himself had nearly been lost, but he had stayed to protect them all. The sacrifices weighed heavily on every heart, a reminder that freedom and life always came at a cost. Yet amid the grief, there was joy. Valorians began helping each other rebuild. Humans assisted without complaint, showing that the bond forged in battle extended beyond the fight. Wolves nudged rubble aside to help clear paths. Gorillas lifted beams that no Valorian could move, and birds scouted ahead to warn of dangers in the still unstable city. For the first time, Valoria felt alive again, not just surviving, but breathing, moving, and growing. And as the days passed, they rebuilt not only their homes, but their spirits. The Valorians realized that their story would forever include the humans and their beasts, creatures from a distant planet who had come when the galaxy had turned its back. Captain Arlen gathered the survivors on a cracked plaza that had once been the heart of Luminara. "Remember this," he said, his voice carrying over the quiet streets. "The galaxy may ignore cries for help. Threats may come again. But if you stand together, if you fight together, you will endure. You are not helpless. You are not alone. You are strong. Valoria is strong." The Valorians listened, their hearts swelling with emotion. Children clung to their parents. Wolves rested loyally beside them, and birds perched quietly observing. Lyra stepped forward, raising her voice. "We will never forget," she said. "We will honor the courage of those who fought with us, and we will never stand alone again. Together we will protect Valoria, always." As night fell, the twin moons reflected softly on the cracked towers. Fires still burned in some places, but the glow was warm, not terrifying. Stars twinkled overhead, and somewhere far away, human ships rested, their engines silent but ready. Valoria had survived not because of one species or one weapon or one hope, but because of many hearts beating as one, human, Valorian, and beast. The survivors gazed at the stars, whispering thanks to the heroes who had come from Earth, and to the beasts whose loyalty had saved them. Captain Arlen and Shadow walked among them quietly, unseen in their modesty yet unforgettable in their courage. The Valorians understood that heroism was not only in fighting, but in sacrifice, in unity, and in the willingness to stand when all seems lost. And in that moment, a truth settled in every heart: Valoria would endure. The Kralith may return, the galaxy may be indifferent, but together they were unstoppable. The humans and their beasts had answered the call, and Valoria had risen stronger than ever. A new dawn had come, not just in the sky, but in the spirit of every Valorian. The stars had witnessed a miracle. Courage, loyalty, and unity across worlds had created a legend that would echo forever. The galaxy might forget, but Valoria would remember, and in that remembrance, hope would never die again.